is the New York Times, which you have on your inbox every day. For me, these are the best newspapers which there are, but really investigative journalism, people which really dig into the sources and find out something. Of course, probably those in the New York Times probably have to write only such a story once a week, but you need to have time to write these good stories. But that's much better than the hundreds of stories you read in many other newspapers, which hardly have any depth. Or would you simply take over what you take from a source.
Would you say that you're actually reaching out well enough and making yourself available and making the data available to journalists? Or are you sitting around waiting for them to call you?
We're mentioning from time to time, let's say, but yeah, we're essentially waiting for them to call us.
You'll be waiting a long time.
No, let's say, but we have the impression that we as a think tank, let's say, we reach out to journalists, I mean, that we want to sell ourselves, and then they don't call you.
I'm sure there's a nice balance. It's extremely
difficult for us, let's say, to find a balance. To what extent should we promote ourselves, and to what extent should we wait for them to call me? This data on the Bank of England, there was a Time magazine reporter which called me yesterday. I mentioned it to them. He was listening with great interest. I mean, fantastic. But I think our jobs are very similar in a think tank and as journalism. We do a bit more the long term, you do a bit more the short term. But you have to be watching, kind of digesting information all the time, and there's so much coming over us every day.
Okay.
I think something consistent that we've heard from a couple people now is the quality of the sources, and something that you said really struck me, that, you know, with the crisis, you really couldn't just pick up a phone and call someone you've never talked to before and start asking questions. You know, this is asking for a big favor from someone you just met on the subway. You know, you need to have developed a rapport and a relationship over time so that when a big story does come along, you know that this is a source that is a quality source that is going to give you quality information, that even if there are extenuating circumstances, they might still be willing to share information with you.
The other thing quickly is, as well as sources, the other thing I think both of you have picked on is data mining. There is a lot of data out there that people don't pick up on. I mean, the IMF figure of the cost of the crisis, $1 trillion, was buried in a very obscure IMF briefing document for the G20. If you can dig that stuff out, you can also move the story on. Information is made available now often in public, but without really intending to press release it for the public. It's background information for finance ministers. But if you can pull it out, like Financial Stability Report, the GSFR, all these reports have a lot of very dramatic data buried deep in their appendixes.
Yeah, and I think this gets into also what Mark Gilbert was showing us yesterday with all the different graphs and numbers, and something you said about journalists, you know, not having many journalists not having a financial training that are in the sector is, you know, people that were educated in journalism or English or communications that go into journalism suddenly find themselves playing with statistical numbers and graphs and modeling things, and it's not something they may have ever thought they would do, but it's something that they very much need to do. If they want to be effective and have impact and have the most meaningful messaging for the public.
Karel, you want to come in here? I've got 3 more questions, so
yeah, but
please,
I think, let's say, data for me, I mean, what we see as a think tank, let's say, if we find good data and we bring them out to you, I mean, they are the most telling things, a figure. If you can find a figure for something. However, in Brussels, another thing which is extremely important, let's say Brussels is more about regulation than about figures, it's read directives. I mean, the hedge funds directive, for example, which I mentioned, the debate has really started around July. But the directive was out end of April. There were 2 months, there was almost no discussion. And it's once these people start to say, sell you stories that you believe it. But the directive was there. I mean, the analysis could have been done of the directive before. Like, for example, these 3 other authorities. You should read these directives which are on the table just to analyze the powers the Commission wants to give to the authorities. Read these directives. They are 70 pages long, extremely long. But there is some things in there which are, for me, if I read it, these are explosive material, because that's what may stir up, for example, the UK. There was somebody from the FSA who said to me, how is this possible? There's hardly any debate about this in the UK. This is explosive material. How could it be, let's say, that UK public opinion accepts this to transfer power and supervision to an EU authority? Impossible for me. But there's no debate, he said. Somebody from the FSA, a director.
Well, hopefully this is where the European Journalism Centre can come in more and promote this to where general journalists are keeping an eye on this to actually raise these issues. Question from here.
Tony Straka, I write the Prudent Investor blog. I need to reflect on all 4 panelists, so sorry, give me 3 minutes. Yeah, Jason, basically I agree with everything you said, and the whole thing about compliance rules, and the whole thing is, yeah, you got buddies from university working at other institutions, so if you hear something that there's a mess developing there, you're gonna warn your buddy. Yeah, this will never be caught by any regulatory agencies or whatever. Yeah, sorry, that's at least the picture I'm getting from Austria.
In history as an undergrad, so none of my buddies work at other banks.
Okay, you're the exception to the rule, yeah? Okay. Then next one was Steve, who ended his presentation with 2 questions. Will economics have to change, and do we have a global media universe? Economy won't have to change. Yeah, that works by itself because people are motivated to make a profit, to have a good living. But what I see after every global crisis, we had a complete change of political and economical leaderships. Yeah, so there will be a complete change of elites in the next 3 years, whether we want it or not. Actually, I want it, because those people who crashed the whole cart against the wall are now telling us, don't worry, we're going to repair it. This reminds me of the situation. I invite somebody to go with me in a sports car. We crash into a wall, and they say, don't worry, we take the next car and we'll do it safely the next time. Yeah, but I can't prove it. Next one was then Melisande. You asked about responsibility of journalists. Yeah, our responsibility is very tightly regulated. If I write some bullshit, I might be facing a multi-million-dollar libel suit. Yeah, so that's very easy on this one. Is therefore regulation needed of journalists? My God, I thought we once were the 4th pillar. Yeah, trying to be the authority who controls the other authorities who are running the show. Yeah, national security. That's always the big excuse and scapegoat. If people investing their money and they think they can sleepwalk into making profits, yeah, that's their problem. It's good if they wake up with a loss to learn their lesson. Yeah, whatever you do to make money, you have to put your energy into it. Nobody will sleepwalk you into it. So that's why I don't trust investment advisors. Self-censorship, yes. When I'm looking into Austria, and the more I hear about the chaotic situation in the Austrian banking sector, I am applying self-censorship to myself right now. And then now, Karel,
You're going to lose it now because your phone's ringing. So
okay. No.
I warned you. Phone rings. Good big penalty.
No. Sorry. I really, Karel, let me do a little
ping pong. Okay, you got 30 seconds.
We need a minute or 1.5. Rating agency regulations. The rating agencies have been late for the last 40 years, be it the Argentina crisis, the Latin American crisis, the savings and loans crisis, yeah, whatever it was, the dot-com bubble, the housing property, yeah, they were always wrong. The best thing would be to shut down the rating agencies, and bankers would go back to do their core task, and that is assessing risk. And it's the same for those investors buying these products. They have to assess the risk themselves. As I say, you don't make money by sleepwalking. Next thing is, when you talk about this FSB and the SER...
Your last point now. Please, you've got to roll it on.
When you're talking about this global level, what are the Chinese saying? They are the ones who have the money in the world right now. Yeah, Europe and the US are in a pretty weak situation to apply new rules on a global level. And then also, I wonder if your efforts will also include that, in investigating what socially unnecessary activities banks are doing. When I look at forex trade, 99% is purely speculative, and only 1% is underlaid with money you need for real trade. Why not shut it down? It's an incestuous game for the bank, and it's a zero-sum game. Yeah. And then the last point is, will you communicate all you find out? Because that's the point. If you keep it within your office, all investors are still the same sheeple before. And then the last advice I have, yeah, because we've seen all these security measures failed and all the regulatory authorities failed. There is always one insurance. I see gold is priced at $1,100 today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment on that. Karel, do you want to follow up quickly on it? Because I've got one or two more questions.
On China, I don't know too much. Let's say I just know that there are problems in the banking system as well, but they can support it because they have 10% economic growth. Let's say if there is a lot of bad debts in the Chinese banking system, they can support it. On the securities market regulatory side, we know there has been plenty of insider trading in the Chinese system as well, because they don't have the securities supervisory system yet. And in fact, by the way, let's say to establish a very good securities supervisory system is extremely difficult. I mean, it requires plenty of long time, let's say, and in fact, they are just in the beginning of that in China. What were your other questions? Let's say, yeah, I mean, of course we publish
We don't
many,
have a whole lot of time to comment
we
on. I
publish
wish we
plenty
would.
of things, let's say, all the time as an institute, but we cannot be with the media all the time, let's say, with every new finding. We try to make it part of a, I mean, if the figures I mentioned, for example, on the Bank of England statistics, I'm writing a report on state aid and banking. Let's say, just know how to assess what has happened. But I discover things all the time, let's say, on these things. But yeah, we will only communicate this to the media once we have a fully finalized report. But then you come out with a report of, say, I mean, 30, 40 pages, but which may be too long already for you to read. I mean, we cannot bring out just one sheet